No. Please.
2 years ago, we got a 1-2-3 punch of some of the best Stephen King adaptations put to media. We got Gerald's Game, directed by Mike Flanagan, which found its way to Netflix. We got The Dark Tower from Nicolas Jarcel, which, no, it's not a good film, but it's so bad that it's good. And we got It from Andy Muschietti, which took the complex narrative of Stephen King's original book and made it filmable by taking the non-linear structure of the book and making the first installment all about the Losers Club's first encounter with Pennywise the Clown, and then promising the sequel would pick up 27 years later when the kids, all grown up, finally head back to their hometown of Derry to finish what they started. I loved the first movie, and I would go as far as to call it a genuine modern classic of the genre. Bill Skarsgård as Pennywise was instantly iconic, the scares were genuine, the cast had amazing chemistry, and it felt like a profound coming-of-age story. Had I reviewed it back then, I likely would have given it 4, maybe even 4.5 stars out of 5. I want to get that out of the way up front, because if it wasn't for the fact that I watched this film and saw the credits, I wouldn't believe that this came from the same creative team, because everything I liked about the original movie, barely present here. The movie has assembled one hell of a cast to play the grown-ups, like James McAvoy, Jessica Chastain, Bill Hader, etc., but they don't actually have that much chemistry with each other, and apart from being obviously scared and running away from CGI effects, they don't really have a lot to work with, but that is the least of the sequel's problems. Clocking in at almost 3 hours, the movie has absolutely no sense of pace or structure to it. The plot involves the kids returning to Derry and having to find a personal object from their past in order to complete a ritual to kill it once and for all. So the structure of the film has one of the kids going off on their own for some reason, going to a place that the audience may or not be familiar with from the last film, encountering something scary, then finding the object, and repeat 4 times, and that's your second act. The predictable pace does the exact opposite of keeping the audience on their toes, which kills the suspense. But the scares are just flat out not scary in this film. All the jump scares are predictable, the effects are strangely poor and repetitive, and Pennywise only gets about 2 minutes of screen time before the big finale, meaning that the previous film's MVP is oddly absent. However, the filmmakers seem committed to making almost every single scene end with a freaky set piece. Almost every single one. Once again, this means the audience will find themselves in rhythm with the film, which is absolutely antithetical to horror, but it also makes you just numb to the whole thing. After an hour with absolutely no sense of pace, it just exhausts you and makes you so very, very bored. It means that when a genuinely effective set piece does occur, like the Hall of Mirrors, it doesn't have an impact because you've just watched 50 scary scenes in a row prior to it. Well, scary in air quotes here. To misquote Syndrome from The Incredibles, if every scene is scary, no scene is scary. The tension is also non-existent because the gang spent the first 2 hours of the film fighting hallucinations which manifest mostly as just generic corpses and zombies. That stuff might scare the kids, but these guys are meant to be more capable grown-ups, and it also seems like It doesn't have much imagination this time round. Part of this might be because the film is trying to stick to the events of the book, but it means that It Chapter 2 feels like an extended third act where all of the interesting character stuff happened in the last film, but it's a third act that has no substance and lasts nearly 3 hours. Maybe the movie might play better when edited to resemble the book structure. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if they did try to repackage a release of this film doing exactly that on Netflix or something. But you'd still be dealing with issues that aren't structure related, like the cast, the effects, the lack of a decent ending. Also, the film has a massive tone problem. In what's meant to be a really dramatic scene for Beverly and Ben, there's a Shining parody played for laughs. There's a random music cue at a moment we later discover contains an important plot point, and also the movie opens with a really brutal homophobic hate crime that is shot and depicted unlike any other act of violence in the film. It actually borders on the fetishistic, and it's really off-putting, and not in the way the filmmakers intended. The film also makes no attempt to contextualize that act of violence, and probably the only reason they did it is because the book did it. But the book also had a scene where all of the kids had a massive orgy that lasts 7 pages to escape the sewers, so the film is clearly not beholden to the book's more questionable elements. There's also a subplot where the loser's old school bully comes back, which goes nowhere and probably could have been cut, but that's neither here nor there really. There's also just some really bad moments of script writing, like how early on Bill Hader's character, who's a stand-up comic, gets freaked out by a kid who's saying cryptic things, only for the kid to be a fan of his work and is just quoting the opening of his act. However, 1, we haven't been told the opening of his act before, and 2, we saw the opening of his act in his first introductory scene, and he never said that quote. This may sound like nitpicking, and it kind of is, but this is basic stuff. Part of me wonders if this was the plan all along, make the first film a stone-cold horror classic to guarantee a good box office haul for the second, and they can just throw that one together in a weekend. It certainly feels that heartless. Horror is the type of genre where it can survive almost any objective critique. Bad effects, bad acting, a bad story, but a horror film cannot survive being boring. And I was bored senseless watching It Chapter 2, and when I wasn't bored, I was just confused about how everything went so wrong here. When the third act rolled around... Also, side note, I forgot to put this in the script, but I just remembered when I was recording it, the whole, climax of the film when they're fighting it at the end, the music and the sound effects were so loud, I genuinely could not hear the dialogue. When the film was over, I had to go to Wikipedia to find out what was actually happening plot-wise in that scene, because everything else around the dialogue was just way too loud. It could have been the audio in my screening, but everything else prior to that was fine, and the only difference in that scene was that the music and the sound effects were really, really prominent, so I don't think it was that. I think this film has just been really badly mixed. When the third act rolled around, the only thing keeping me going was the hope that I would get to see the cosmic space turtle. But deep down, I knew that I wasn't going to see the cosmic space turtle. I give It Chapter 2, I'm so disappointed, 1 star out of 5.
Hello. Trilbee.